don't stop.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A 1 2. A 1 2. Yeah.
Check it, we rock. TikTok, you don't stop.
It's your boy Satya. Beat vibes. We back, man. Ain't never left.
TikTok, you don't stop.
TikTok and it don't stop. The rock and humanitarian, the rock and it don't stop. Chachas, back like I never left. Fresh to my last breath, rep to my last step. When I reach my peak, I kick a hole into the speaker. Go a little deeper, the flow reaching the procedure. I don't need you. Trust me in honesty. The game ready to aim steady. She talk to me, please bust me. And you don't wanna be on the receiving end of trouble. I'm never on the bench, I'm in the huddle. Let's get ready to rumble. I work long nights like my tumble. Cause rappers get soup like gumbo. I fly like Dumbo, living life jumbo like Great Buddha in Colombo. Nice, the free monster, flights to Sri Lanka. Meet sponsors and serve love like Bianca. Tough like Tonka, your boots getting stuffed like lobster. I got enough slugs for imposters, your bosses. Keep the game locked like the rosters.
TikTok, you don't stop. To the
TikTok and it don't stop. The rock and you maintain the rock and it don't stop. The rock the clock ticking, the plot ticking, the peanut chefing up dope beats in the hot kitchen. To warn y'all goose to stop tripping.
Thank you.
And that's no rule like stop pipping. The watch tripping, I rock different time zones, cause my zones are certified flipping. I hang on it like a rock climber all day. And you parlay, gonna need a strong in the leg. I get it on every time, rhyme sharp like a lot of the MC in this vicinity, illustrate the Holy Trinity, the whole facility. Locked down for the threat and my hot sound was a weapon. You shot down in a second just for trying to be fly. So don't monkey around like a orangutan. I Luke Kang, your whole little gang. Cause I'm like Wu-Tang, cruise like the rain. Tuck when you stand in the range.
I'm live streaming for Apartheid. Good for you guys.
I guess I gotta chill, nigga. Cause my mama told me that I gotta be a role model. I just finished up a no bottle jam. We broke a couple bags, it was probably 10. My thoughts is like a loose kite that's in the wind. My kids are reaching for the string, trying to pull me in. But when that cold bottle hits my lips once again, just feel my life like the same record, just let it spin. Swimming in the bottle of the liquor, and I'm open every sip when it goes down smooth. And I ain't got a problem with the liquor, and I sure as hell ain't got no problem.
To get to the bottom of the bottle without vomiting, wallowing in my own sorrow. The
and millions dead. Dead, dead, come on, dead. Come on. Work it out. Set it up. 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 Pushing Hussein together in bed. Giving HEAD head. Y'all motherfuckers heard what he said. Billions made and millions dead. Pushing Hussein together in bed. Giving HEAD head. Y'all motherfuckers heard what he said. Billions made and millions dead.
In a land not very far away from here, George W. Bush was drinking beer. His daddy was head of the CIA. Now listen up close to what I say. The CIA worked for Standard Oil and other companies to rule their law. In a whole other land where the people saw pain, the people got wise and took a stand to the old companies. Hey, shit money. This is our oil, our land, our money. CIA to the medicine. I was like, to I like to help stop the Iran railroad.
Hi, this is Will James for Uprise RI. We are at a rally to encourage U.S. politicians and companies to stop funding the Israeli military. Currently, there is fighting going on in Palestine. A lot of Palestinians are being killed by airstrikes. People are referring to it as ethnic cleansing and genocide here, and they're asking the U.S. government companies to stop funding it. There is one news camera here today, one other news camera besides Uprise, and I think Channel 5 was here, but before the event started, they packed up their camera and left for some reason. So I think I'm going to start commenting on just like when media arrives, just so that you have that information on further future live streams. I don't think that any news organization showed up to the last rally for Palestine, which was organized by RISD students. I think 1,000 people showed up, and I think Channel 10 showed up briefly, and it was just Uprise and the Bartholomew Town podcast. And I don't think anyone else covered the 1,000 person rally.
Thank you. I did my best. It was a little soft, so I had to kind of boost up the audio and work on it. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I really was. I was happy to be invited to come. Thank you so much. I appreciate الحمد لله يعني لذلك عندهم اعراض تماما الحمد لله.
I did better than
It is like it's an NFT. It's the first.
Yeah, I started like begging them for work. I was like, you need to do this project. My boss would let me. Oh, the project.
I could truly just spend my
So yeah, the knuckles have actually got. So now it's like, oh.
famous for sunrise? Yeah. So my friend Brittany, who's in Sunrises, we took her to go together. And she was like,
Excellent. Can I get your side?
Yeah.
I left my jacket, and I don't feel strongly about
What?
it.
It's true, isn't it?
I don't know when the speakers are gonna start. It's been a while, but I'm sure they're just waiting for more people to show up, or maybe waiting for another speaker. They already announced that they're asking speakers to come up to the front area, so I'm sure it'll be. Oh, I think it's starting now.
But thankfully, like, they seem to coalesce at the right time.
Test. Hey y'all, can you hear me? Folks in the back, can you hear me? Everyone in the back, can you hear me? If you could clap. Clap if you can hear me, just so you get the energy rolling. Yeah, very cool. I just have a quick announcement. We are just getting started. Wanted to make an announcement for folks who may need interpretation in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos y todas. Si necesitan o prefieren o quieren interpretación en español, hay un interpretador acá, se llama Enrique, tiene bandera de Palestina, y va a hacer la interpretación en español si lo necesitan. I'm just gonna say it again in English in case you find anyone who needs Spanish interpretation. We have Enrique over here, who's doing some Spanish interpretation just in case anyone prefers it or needs it. But yeah, I'll start us off with a chant, and then I'm going to pass it over to our MC. Let's do it in English and Spanish just for fun, right? So, free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Palestina libre!
Palestina libre.
Palestina libre.
Palestina libre.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Palestina libre.
Palestina libre.
Palestina libre.
Palestina libre.
Awesome. I'm going to pass it up to Russia, who is our MC for tonight. Please welcome. Thank you so much for coming out.
How's everyone doing out there? Come on, let me hear you guys. Come on, speak up. There we go. Wake up. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. You know exactly why we're here, but for those of you who don't, just in case, we're here to speak on behalf of Palestinians under Israeli occupation and apartheid, and we're demanding that our U.S. funding stops funding Israeli apartheid. Forgive me.
No occupation. No
Thank you.
occupation.
Yes, no occupation. We have some great speakers for you today, and I'll go ahead and get started. So our first speaker is Sarah Zaza, who's an activist, humanitarian, and co-founder and board member of AHOPE, Americans Helping Others Prosper. Sarah also works closely with refugees and is also on board of MAE, Organization for the Homeless. Sarah, come on up.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you all hear me? Yeah. Are you sure? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The reason I chose this particular topic to speak about is the other day I went to 2 rallies in one day. And a Muslim sister asked me, what did you accomplish going to these rallies? What did you get out of it? I was absolutely dumbfounded, speechless. I couldn't believe that this sister asked me this. I just looked at her and said, if this is the only tiny thing I can do in front of God, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I'm going to do it. So my speech is geared towards my Muslim brothers and sisters, but this actually is for everyone. But please, brothers and sisters, take this with great respect as I say it to you, because I need to remind myself every single day. Many Muslims are hesitant to get involved in politics or just indifferent, and this is for several reasons. Some feel it is a waste of time and energy to be political because it takes away from our time to worship, and that as Muslims our priority in this life is our personal private worship of God. This might look like not participating in elections, not participating in protests and demonstrations, not spreading awareness of injustice and plagues injustice that plagues our world, not openly and firmly condemning the oppression and marginalization of different people, and the list goes on. But some Muslims remain neutral, not to offend anyone. They want to maintain likability, and they fear that being too radical in their political stances may deter from people from coming closer to our faith. They may walk on eggshells, especially in the regards to this sensitive topic tonight of Palestine and Israel. I stand here today to remind you that Islam is a way of life and is very clear on matters of injustice and oppression. By default, pursuing justice should define our identities as Muslims. It is our divine duty. In the Quran, in the chapter An-Nisa, verse 135, O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, even against yourselves or your parents or your kin, and whether it be against the rich or the poor, for Allah can best protect both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest you swerve. And if you distort justice or decline to do justice, verily, Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. This verse, this particular verse that I just read, is so powerful. They have it hung up at Harvard Law School's faculty library from the Quran. I want you to think about what it means to stand up for justice, even against your own self. To question yourself, to question your biases and privileges, to question your roles in injustice. I want you to be uncomfortable and be willing to grow and learn, as I am right now. Standing for justice, even against ourselves and the people closest to us, is the hardest work of all. Furthermore, in Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 11, God says, indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, whoever witnesses evil, let him change it with his hand. And if he is unable, then with his tongue. And if he is unable, then with his heart. But this is the weakest form of faith. It is not enough to simply pray and call on the power of God, especially if we are able to do more. Islam does not allow us to be bystanders to any form of injustice. We are morally obligated to do everything in our power to eradicate oppression. One way or another, we can all contribute. I'm wrapping it up. One of my favorite quotes about power is the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. The point I'm trying to make, you cannot separate politics from your Muslimness. You cannot be neutral and indifferent, as this aids the oppressor. You cannot remain silent. We have to fight for the rights of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and we also have to fight for the rights of people all around the world and right here in Providence. When you stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, are you going to be able to answer that question of Him? What have you done for the wronged and oppressed? So educate yourselves, engage in constructive dialogue, stand firm in justice, even if it offends your own family and your friends, even if it drives people away from you, even if your voice is shaking. This is your moral, and I speak to everyone now. This is your moral and spiritual duty. It is the moral and spiritual duty of Muslims. It is fard. It is an act of worship to strive for justice just as much as praying and fasting are. Do not forget that God sent our beloved prophet, peace be upon him, to bring about social justice. With no justice, there is no peace. I want to hear you. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Louder! One more time. All together. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
A round of applause for Stark, please, and that very powerful speech she just gave. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Up next, we have Satya Mahapatra, who's from Answer Coalition. Satya, thank you.
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Occupation is a crime!
Occupation is a crime!
Once again, free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Occupation is a crime!
Occupation is a crime!
Please everyone, my name is Satya Mahapatra. I am an organizer with the Answer Coalition. Answer stands for Act Now to Stop War and end racism. Answer Coalition was founded just 3 days after the September 11, 2001 attacks. Answer initiated a massive US anti-war movement opposing the US invasion of Iraq in the months prior to March 19, 2003. The coalition has played an important role in the fight against racist religious profiling, in support of immigrant and workers' rights, and for economic and social justice for all. Our members are engaged in a range of struggles, from the local battles against police brutality to international campaign against militarism and war. So last week on May 15, on the Nakba Day, when 1,000 people gathered in solidarity with Palestinians in Providence, I was holding a banner. Someone who is pro-Israel saw me with the banner and asked if I was Muslim. I am not Muslim. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Jewish. I'm an Indian. So why was I there? Why am I here today? Because Palestine is an issue of settler colonialism, occupation and apartheid. To isolate it purely religious issue is just a way to put a cover on the truth. The truth about the state of Israel's vicious oppression of Palestinians. I am here to stand with the courageous people of Palestine, fighting against national oppression, fighting for national liberation, fighting for self-determination, fighting for creating a state which is deprived from them by settler colonialism. Palestine is one of the last unfinished countries of Afro-Asian liberation project. When we say free Palestine, what do we mean? We mean liberation of a nation currently under the jackboot of settler colonial subjugation. Recently, violence against Asian was in the consciousness in the US in the wake of the massacre of salon workers in Atlanta a few months back. People quickly mobilized against it. Palestine is part of West Asia. When Gaza gets bombed, it is the part of West Asian nation, Palestine, that gets bombed by Euro-American weapons and by a settler colonial client state, Israel. Israel proxies the same white supremacist violence that targets black, brown, Asian people here in the United States. That's right. By saying Middle East, right? The Orientalist name Middle East, the violence against the Asian is kept hidden. The majority of the world nation in Asia, Africa, Latin America are on the side of Palestinians. And who are the nations who have given a carte blanche to Israel to slaughter Palestinians? It is the usual suspects, who are the former colonial plunderers of Asia and Africa. US, UK, France, Germany, Canada, and a few small US vassal states like Colombia and Brazil, both under the utter far-right fascistic government. Some of these imperialist countries have bombed, destroyed, and collapsed nations in Asia, Africa, and continue to do so. Apartheid comes at the later stage of settler colonialism. Let's investigate how the past examples of apartheid were defeated through struggle. Jim Crow in the United States was an apartheid system. It got defeated with the two-pronged struggle. People inside the US mobilized courageously, and then there was a second factor. Several Afro-Asian countries got decolonized, and the US needed legitimacy to project to the newly decolonized nation who found socialism attractive to build their nation and tilted towards Soviet Russia, and only saw lynching and Jim Crow in the United States. It were these two things that defeated Jim Crow: local struggle and international situation. The same goes for apartheid South Africa. It was both the courageous South African people, the revolutionaries, and the international solidarity that defeated apartheid in South Africa. So what's our strength now?
Last week, more than 65 cities across the US had solidarity marches with Palestine. 100,000 people gathered across the US. A few days after, 250,000 marched in Detroit alone. Internationally, check out how the South African dock workers are refusing to load Israeli cargo. In the US, Biden is facing unprecedented opposition on Israel policy, overshadowing plans to tout his domestic rollout. Israel is facing an uprising not seen in decades. There is a huge setback in public opinion worldwide. Israel cannot stop the Gaza resistance. Courageous Palestinian resistance and the international solidarity will snuff out the apartheid state. Our task here is to mobilize and make that the US government and Biden administration fails to restock Israel's weapon arsenals, to reward Israeli war crimes, and artificially prop up the apartheid state, which time has gone now. So, to conclude, as it is said in Hindustani, Philistini, Zindabad. Long live Palestine. Palestine will still be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Thank you so much. Another incredibly powerful speech. We'll just keep rolling along. Up next is Imam Abdul Latif from the Islamic Center of Rhode Island in Providence.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace be on you. I have come today in the spirit of my heroes. I have come today in the spirit of those luminaries. I have come today in the spirit of those freedom fighters who stood up, who lost their lives, who gave their blood and sweat to get freedom for Black Americans in America. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and also those who fought for freedom for the South Africans, like Nelson Mandela. I've come in their spirit because they also stood up for the rights of the Palestinians. They spoke up for the rights of the Palestinians. In September 1964, Malcolm X took a trip to Gaza, and he connected the dots. He made a connection with the state of oppression that was happening in Palestine, but what was happening here in America and what was happening in South Africa. It's all the same system of oppression. Yeah. The same system of massacre and murder. But what is happening in Palestine is continuing. Even though the ceasefire has stopped, but the struggle still continues. Yes. The struggle still continues. That's right. And it's up to all of us, brothers and sisters, those of conscience, those of faith who believe in Allah, who believe in God in the last day, must continue this struggle. Because our brothers and sisters in Palestine, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they are still dying. They are still suffering. Their homes are taken away. Their homes are destroyed. Whole families are killed. Whole families are killed, brothers and sisters. So we must not stop. We must speak truth to power. Yes. We must go to the top office to Biden and Tell him, fear God.
That's right.
Stop what you are doing. Do not side with the oppressors. What he is doing, he is legitimizing the oppression of Israel, or the rights of Israel, and delegitimizing the rights of the Palestinians. So whoever supports this evil regime, whoever supports them, with them killing women and children, they will also support Hitler Nazi regime. They will also support Stalin USSR military regime. They will also support South Africa apartheid system. And that is the same system that is being perpetrated against the Palestinians.
That's right.
So whoever supports this regime, you would have also supported those regimes. It's the same. Brothers and sisters, here in America, in every event with slavery, and the blacks stood up to end slavery, with the Jim Crow laws, with segregation, with the rights during the 50s and 60s of the struggle of black Americans to gain freedom, to gain their rights. There were those at every moment, every juncture, the majority of the people either had their eyes closed or they supported what was happening here in America. At every juncture, they supported it. They didn't understand why the blacks want freedom from slavery, but they're doing good to them. They're treating them well. Now, this government, but how were the black Americans able to get freedom, to get their rights? They stood up. They didn't give up. So we must not give up. Even though the government is siding with the oppressor, we must not side with the oppressors. Yes. We must not side with them. Allah says, كَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Therefore we have made you the nation of justice. So we must be the nation of justice, stand up for justice and for right, whether it's against us or whether it's for us or against us. Yes. We must stand up for justice, brothers and sisters. This is my advice to you and to me. So, we, all of us, whether you're a Muslim or non-Muslim, but you must have the conscience. You must be human. You must have a heart. You must have a heart. Once the prophet's son passed away, and one of the Bedouins, he said to the prophet, "Oh prophet, you are crying over your son?" He said, "I have 10 children. If any one of them died, I would not cry. You will not cry if any one of his children died." The prophet said, what can I do if God has taken mercy from your heart? All we need is to have mercy in our hearts, brothers and sisters. To be human is to have mercy. We must show our Palestinian brothers and sisters mercy. Yeah. To speak up for them. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Imam. Another powerful speech, another great speaker. Okay. Up next, we have Enrique Sanchez. He'll introduce himself. Enrique.
Let's go, Enrique!
Hello everyone, my name is Enrique Sanchez. I'm political director of the BLM-RI PAC, and this is Harrison Tuttle, our executive director. We are here in full support of the Palestinian struggle. We also help organize and mobilize with other leftist and progressive groups in the city, including Providence, Reclaim, Sunrise, PSL, mutual aid groups, Wide Awakes, PVD, and ONA Providence. I am here today as everyone else in support of the Palestinian liberation against the settler, colonial, and apartheid state of Israel. Yeah. As a brown person organizing and mobilizing with BIPOC, LGBTQ IA plus and non-binary community members, it is my duty and it should be our duty to stand up for all oppressed people, not just in our nation but across the global south. I'm an anti-imperialist and anti-colonial socialist who sympathizes with our people from Palestine. I've noticed throughout my upbringing and understanding of foreign policy and international affairs that there are educators, journalists, scholars, and politicians who tell us non-Jewish pro-Palestinian supporters that we should not get involved with their affairs, that we have no idea what we're talking about, that it's a complex issue. Pro-Israel supporters have criticized black and brown people, stating that BLM has no correlation with the Palestinian struggle. They have even gone as far as to say that we are enabling anti-Semitism ideology with our pro-Palestinian supports. Pro-Israel supporters hate the lefts more than they hate the extreme right. The irony. Pro-Israel lobbying groups such as AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, work to suppress and silence pro-Palestinian voices and support with the U.S. AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobbying groups even go as far as to silence U.S. politicians who voice their support for Palestine. The BLM RIPAC supports our Jewish people here and across the globe. We support groups such as Jewish Voices for Peace who stand with injustices and oppression elsewhere. The BLM RIPAC will not support Zionism and racist nationalist rhetoric that enables an apartheid state. The BLM RIPAC and the left and RI says no to the ethnic cleansing of East Jerusalem. The BLM RIPAC and the left and RI says no to the siege of Gaza. The BLM RIPAC and the left and RI says no to the bombing of innocent men, women, and children in Gaza and the military occupation of the West Bank. Here it is the militarized police versus people of color. In Palestine it is the Israeli military versus the Palestinian people. The BLM RIPAC supports pressuring our congressional delegation to withdraw the $3.8 billion a year for its military and apartheid Israel. The BLM RIPAC supports the BDS movement to divest our tax dollars from their institutions and corporations. The struggle of the global south is one against the West. The BLM RIPAC supports the end of U.S. and Western hegemony across the globe. The BLM RIPAC supports the end of U.S. and NATO bombings across the Middle East that has only delivered the destruction and murder of millions of Muslim, Arab, Persian, black, and brown people fighting for the self-determination and liberation of white supremacy, Western imperialism, and colonialism. From the streets of Chicago and New York to the favelas of Brazil and El Alto, Bolivia, from Managua, Nicaragua, and Caracas, Venezuela, to Johannesburg, South Africa, and Nigeria, from Syria and Iraq to the complete and total liberation of Palestine. Mark my words, all black and brown people will be liberated one day. And from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free!
What is your name? How old are you? 3. What do you want to tell everyone?
Free Palestine!
Can you repeat after Maryam?
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Thank you, Mariam. We hear you. Okay, folks, up next we have Farah Hawad. Farah is a student at North Providence High School who is from the town of Safriya, city of Yafa in Palestine. Farah!
My name is Farah Hawad. I am a Muslim Palestinian high school student. I was born and raised in the United States. I grew up in a family that lived the Palestinian struggle every single day of their lives. I grew up watching my homeland being bombed constantly on the news. Not until a couple of years ago did I truly begin to understand the pain and suffering of the Palestinians. I didn't know what being Palestinian meant. Not until I saw my great-grandmother's tears over my family member's death did I truly understand the level of depth and pain of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Both sets of my great-parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents had experienced the Nakba, the catastrophe in Arabic. The Nakba, as my family experienced it, is what follows. My grandfather from my mother's side was born in Haifa, Palestine. However, he is from Burin, Nablus. He holds his village and Palestine so close to his heart, but he was forced to leave his home in 1948. As a 7-year-old boy, he was displaced from his home and became a refugee. The home that he was born in, the home he was growing up in, the place that he called home was stripped from him. Till this day, my grandpa says, I wish I could at least live in the dumpsters of Burin. My grandpa loves and misses Burin, Palestine, more than anything. It is his home. He became a citizen of the United States 20 plus years ago, and he requested for his birthplace to be listed on his passport as Haifa, Palestine. He traveled back to Palestine for the first time since the Nakba in 2000. He was kept at the border for over 6 hours for no reason other than his birthplace, Haifa. Imagine not being able to enter the place you were born and raised. Imagine being expelled from your home at such a young age. Nowhere to run, no place to go. This is what 750,000 plus Palestinians experienced on May 15th, 1948. This day is so painful to the Palestinians. My father was actually born on May 15th, but he refuses to celebrate his birthday because it is the day of Al-Nakba.
Wow.
So picture this. You are sitting in your home and one day, without warning, a complete stranger barges in and tells you that you need to leave your house right now and to leave everything behind. My grandmother on my mom's side was born in Athara, Ramallah. Athara is a small town in Ramallah full of beautiful, simple people. In 1967, my grandmother and her 6 siblings, all between the ages of 3 and 13, were forced to leave their home in Athara. My great-grandparents picked up the 7 children and left with nowhere to go. They became refugees overnight, forced to leave their safe place, forced to abide by the rules of people who only hold power due to the countries and organizations that prop them up.
Yep.
In the year 2000, my grandmother was finally able to go home and visit family in Palestine. But even this was a struggle. Because she was born in Palestine, the Israeli occupation forces held her at the border for over 4 hours.
Dang.
Each year, when she is thinking about traveling back home, my grandmother grows even more worried that she won't be able to enter Palestine, all because she was born there. My grandparents from my father's side have experienced all of the same hardships. However, there is one difference. They are not even allowed to visit whatsoever.
Wow.
According to the Israeli government, my grandparents have no rights to visit the land they were born in. They have no right to visit any part of Palestine. They have no rights as Palestinians, although they do have Jordanian passports. This is especially a problem due to the fact that this is in violation of UN Resolution 194, which demands that Israel respect and promotes the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and property. These stories explain the bare minimum of what my grandparents and more than 750,000 Palestinians experienced. Since 1948, the U.S. has given approximately $233.7 billion to Israel, making it the largest annual recipient of American aid.
Wow.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
No more taxes! No more!
The United States is giving our tax dollars, our hard-earned money, to murderers, to an apartheid system that lacks humanity, to an Israeli settler movement, military, and society which has killed thousands of innocent women, children, and men, all for land in which they have been trying to take over for 73 years. 73 years of disproportionate conflict. Guns versus rocks. You do the math. And still, through all of this, the Palestinians stand as strong as ever. But their voices need to be heard. Everything they experience needs to be displayed for the whole world to see. This is not a conflict. This is a genocide. We need to stand up and take action. No more words. Action! No justice! No peace! No No justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace.
We need to get justice for Palestine. I urge you all to support the BDS movement. BDS stands for boycott, divestment, sanctions. This is a movement that is Palestinian-led for freedom, justice, and equality. This movement upholds the principle that Palestinians are entitled to the same rights as the rest of humanity. The BDS movement stresses boycotting, which means withdrawing support from Israel's apartheid regime, complicit Israel sporting, cultural, and academic institutions, and from all Israeli and international companies engaged in violations of Palestinian human rights. In addition, this movement urges banks, local councils, churches, pension funds, and universities to withdraw investments from the state of Israel. And of course, the last piece is to implement sanctions against the state of Israel until it recognizes the fundamental Palestinian right of return, an end to occupation and colonization, and the recognition of the fundamental rights of all Palestinians under Israeli rule. If you support the rights of Palestinians and believe in ending the occupation, BDS is the movement to be a part of. Palestinians deserve better. Let's bring them the justice they've been fighting for, the justice they deserve.
Ladies and gentlemen, Farah, give her another round of applause. Awesome. She is the future. The young ones have to lead the way. I mean, I'm young, but you know it. Okay, up next, we have Jackie Goldman, who is a Providence resident and a member of the executive committee of Providence DSA. Jackie.
We stand here in solidarity with Palestine, and we're here to demand the end to an apartheid state. Unfortunately, across Jewish spaces, you see people trying to reframe this situation that we need to defend Israel on the grounds that not doing so is anti-Semitic. I agree, complete bullshit. I think, and I'm here to stand as a Jewish person and explain why we need to stand for anti-Zionism and demand the end to the apartheid state. I grew up going to the Jewish day school for 7 years. I went to synagogue every single weekend, and I went to 11 years of Jewish summer camps, and to this day, I still study Jewish text. And honestly, those philosophies are what ground a lot of my social justice work. Time and time again, I come back to the words tzedek, tzedek tirdof, which means justice, justice you should pursue. Now, if you hold these values, then you also cannot be a Zionist, because justice is not expelling hundreds of thousands of people from their home. Justice is not restricting citizenship on the basis of faith. Justice is not limiting the freedom of movement. Justice is not the murder of innocent men, women, and children and labeling them as terrorists. Justice is not the dispossession of land and advancing violent settler colonialism. What we can see is what's happening in Palestine is not justice. This is oppression, murder, and goes against every single value that I was taught in a Jewish space. I am so tired of people saying things like "Ve'ahavta le'erecha kamocha," which means love your brother, love your neighbor as your own, and then turning around and trying to justify these atrocities. They call this Zionism, they call it the necessary protection of the Jewish people, but it is oppression, and we all know that oppression, and for some, reinforces the oppression for everyone else.
That's right, yeah.
Not only am I here as a Jewish person, but also as a socialist, which means I see the power of every single one of us to be able to do something. We need the solidarity of everyday working people because we cannot wait for our legislators to take action.
That's right.
We need to listen to the demands made by the Palestinian people among us. They're calling for BDS. We must support BDS. We must stop the flow of money and weapons into Israel. And we must stand in solidarity. Now I want to take a second and talk specifically to the other members of the Jewish community in the audience. We have to unlearn all of the Zionist propaganda that we've been told over the years. We have to talk to our friends and family who have not yet decided to stand with us and have those hard conversations. They're not easy, but they are necessary. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Another round of applause for a wonderful speaker. We're just about to start our march, but before we do that, we have something extremely important to do, albeit sad. Farah will come up here and read the list of all the children that have been killed during Israeli airstrikes. We'll follow the conclusion of the names with a 1 minute moment of silence, and then Max will come up here and tell us how we will proceed with the march.
Amir Al-Tanani, age 7. Adam Al-Tanani, 4. Ahmed Al-Tanani, 2. Ismail Al-Tanani, 7. Rashid Abu Arah, 16. Saeed Oda, 16. Atala Rayyan, 17. Mahmoud Kmayan, 17. Yazan Al-Masri, 2. Ibrahim Al-Masri, 11.
Marwan Al-Masri, 6. Amar Al-Amur, 10. Hamad Al-Amur, 13. Ali Abu Alia, 15. Amir Snobar, 16. Islam Al-Atar, 8. Amira Al-Atar, 6. Muhammad Al-Atar, 9 months. Suhaib Al-Hadidi, 13. Abdul Rahman Al-Rahidi, 8. Muhammad Matar, 16. Zaid Qaisiya, 17. Muhammad Hamayr, 15. Maryam Abu Hatab, 7. Yemen Abu Hatab, 5. Bilal Abu Hatab, 9. Yusuf Abu Hatab, 10. And forgive me, we forgot to mention this in the beginning. Please, ladies and gentlemen, when we're reading the list, make sure you pay attention to how many from one family have been slaughtered. This is a prime example of the ethnic cleansing we are talking about that we demand an end for.
Muhammad Al-Haddad, 16. Muhammad Mandil, 17. Salim Al-Namani, 17. Mahmoud Saeed, 17. Bilal Najjar, 16. Adham Amara, 17. Sajid Mizher, 17. Saif Abu Zaid, 14. Yusuf Al-Dayya, 14. Hassan Shalbi, 13. The list goes on. Abdul Salha, 13. Yahya Khalifa, 13. Lina Shahir, 15. Mustafa Ubaid, 16. Basha Samour, 17. Ibrahim Hassanian, 16. Muhammad Sulaiman, 15. Hussein Hamid, 11. Bara Al-Gharbali, 15. Hamza Ali, 12. Hala Al-Rifi, 13. Zaid Al-Tabani, 4. Khalid Kanu, 17. Lina Isa, 13. Bathina Ubaid, 6. Ahmed Al-Hawajri, 14. Muhammad Abu Daya, 9 months. Hur al-Zamili, 2. Ibrahim al-Rantisi, 7 months. Fauzia Abu Faris, 17. Abdullah Jawda, 12. Muhammad Bahir, 17. Rashid Abu Ara, 16. Mahmoud Tolbe, 12. Idu Abigail, 5. Nadine Awad, 16. Usama Al-Hadidi, 15. Suhaib Al-Hadidi, 12. Excuse me. Yahya Al-Hadidi, 10. Abd al-Rahman Al-Hadidi, 7.
Yara Al-Qawlak, 9. Hala Al-Qawlak, 12. Rula Al-Qawlak, 5. Yazan Al-Qawlak, 13. Hala Al-Qawlak, 14. Zaid Al-Qawlak, 8. Qusay Al-Qawlak, 6 months. Adam Al-Qawlak, 3. Ahmed Al-Qawlak, 15. All that from one family, ladies and gentlemen. Yazan Al-Ifranji, 13. Amira Al-Ifranji, 9. Mira Al-Ifranji, 11. Dima Al-Ifranji, 15. Lana Ashkanta, 5. Zain Ashkantna, 2. Yahya Ashkantna, 4. Dana Ashkantna, 9.
Dima Salia, 10. Nagam Salha, 2. Mina Sharir, 2. Islam Nasir, 16. Yusuf Al-Baz, 13. Rafif Abu Daya, 10. Ubaida Jawabra, 17. Tala Abu Al-Uf, 13. And Tawfiq Abu Al-Uf, 17. Allah yarhamhum. We just have a moment of silence for these children. Thank you, Farah. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And remember, we have to be the voices for these children. We have to be the voices for the oppressed. Because if we're not their voices, who will listen? So it is our duty to stand here and speak up for those who are living under oppression. And that's exactly why we're all here today. And we thank you so much. And Max is going to come up right now and tell us how we're going to proceed with the march.
Hello, everyone. The names you just heard were just the names of the children. It's important to say their names. There were many more names that we could not read today. There were many more thousands that have been killed by bombs from Israel. There are many more thousands beyond that who have been killed by the occupation, who have been killed by the blockade, who have been killed by not being able to get to the hospital in time, who have been killed by starvation. The occupation is not just an issue of Israel. The occupation is our issue too, because this occupation is funded and armed by the United States. So, we are going to be marching to some of these companies and politicians here in Providence who are responsible in part for maintaining this occupation. We will be forming up and marching around downtown to Textron World Headquarters. Textron, among other things, is a weapons manufacturer and a military vehicles manufacturer, providing the arms and getting rich off of killing Palestinians. And then we will be, boo to that, come on. We will then be marching further down back towards the park. We will be staging a die-in to show our solidarity with Palestinians, and then we will be stopping in front of Senator Jack Reed's office. Senator Jack Reed heads the Senate Arms Committee, helping to arm apartheid Israel.
Yep.
Boo.
Shame on him. Fuck him.
So, let's form up the march. We're going to form up along that pathway, heading out of the park between the fountain and heading towards Kennedy Plaza. If you were going to the front, please grab a banner. If you are leading chants, please come grab a megaphone here. Look out for marshals to help form the parade. We will be starting in just a moment. Please join us for the march. It is important to make our voices heard to the people who need to stop this occupation.
Everybody gets the microphone. I think there's people.
Hi, this is Will James for Uprise RI. This is a rally in support of Palestine. People asking U.S. government and companies to stop funding and providing support to the Israeli military, the military of the country of Israel. There's going to be a march now. People are going to march to Textron, which is a Providence, Rhode Island based company which creates and designs weapons that are used in Israel. Then they're going to stage a die-in, and they're also going to march to the office of Senator Jack Reed, who is on the Senate Armed Forces Committee, who chairs the Senate Armed Forces Committee. He is the senator, one of two senators who represent Rhode Island in Congress. Again, this is Will James for Uprise RI. Thank you for tuning in.
As just an individual and civilian, to come and show my support for the Palestinian people, and so that I unequivocally stand for decolonization and justice.
I'm here because this is my living law.
I would say there's probably like over 300 people, at least. I always try to be like really conservative with the estimate just in case we're wrong, because then we can say, oh, actually it's more rather than less. Providence, Rhode Island. Hundreds of people here today. Burnside Park.
Brand new 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee. New exterior design.
Yes, I think over 300 is right.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea!
To make it worth your
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. 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 From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free!
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Long live Palestine.
Free, free Palestine! Long live Palestine!
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine! Long live Palestine!
We're in Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, folks, the next one goes like this. Justice, justice, we know how. Lift the seas of Gaza now. Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now.
Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now.
Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now.
Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now.
Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now.
Justice, justice, we know how.
Lift the seas of Gaza now. Palestine!
weapons that are sold to Israel.
Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Yeah!
No kidding. Of course, the weapons manufacturer would have safety problems.
Government. That's bloody business, and it takes racism to justify it. The U.S. supports Israel because it supports its own racism. Our police train with the Israeli military because they share the same colonial agenda. The wealthy in the U.S., as in Israel, are making trillions of dollars off the backs of working people worldwide, and trillions more making weapons to kill them. You may have heard the opposite. You may have heard Israel isn't racist. No, Israel is just defending itself against racist Arabs who want to wipe out the Jews. But oppressed people are smarter than to fall for that. We know that racism is only used to make allies for wars that only benefit the rich. Racism is the tool of the oppressor, and it's useless to the oppressed. And that's true in the
U.S. just as it's true in Palestine. The late, great black revolutionary George Jackson wrote, "The great majority of blacks reject racism. They have never found it expedient, wise, or honorable to take on the characteristics of the enemy. For blacks, a concern for the survival of the race is not, patently not, definable as racism." Doesn't this also describe the Palestinian people? Israel waged an 11-day siege on Gaza. Crowds marched in Jerusalem, shouting death to terrorists. We may hear that there is a conflict between people, creeds, even civilizations. But are Jews and Palestinians attacking each other in the U.S. and Palestine? In this very crowd, we are here, Jews, Palestinians, and people of other backgrounds, together. Jews are not the enemy of the Palestinian people. Israel is the enemy of the Palestinian people. Israeli settlers arm themselves with racist laws and ideology to justify theft, murder, torture, and genocide. When Palestinians fight back against Israeli violence, they are not fighting Judaism, they're fighting colonialism, along with all the companies like Textron that profit from their oppression. They hate their oppressors because of their skin color or their religion. They hate their oppressors because they are holding a gun to their head. One group lives by exploiting another. So we need to stop funding Israel's apartheid state and its racist assault on Palestine. But we also need to go further, because Israel is not the only modern reality. Because people around the world are forced into submission by the U.S. military. Because Israel and the U.S. both survive on racism and war. Because colonial destruction is not a fluke under capitalism, it is the motor that keeps the car running. We know that it is not enough to pull U.S. funding from Israel. We must bring U.S. imperialism to its knees, along with the oppressive global system it supports. So our question is, reform or revolution? This is the choice that decides the future of humanity. We have to ask ourselves what life we want to live. Many of us may seem to have chances for advancement in the so-called land of opportunity. But if we look closely, our opportunities here are rotten with the same contradictions as in Israel. Israel says it's strong on women's rights because women and men fight side by side in the army. But is it women's liberation if an Israeli woman can slap a dozen Palestinian women with a single airstrike? Israel says it's friendly to LGBT people. It has its gay clubs and so on. Is it LGBT friendly to starve queer Palestinians and demolish their homes? Is it green for the Jewish National Fund to plant trees on stolen land? So again, I'm asking you, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life where our brother in the United States, our comrades in the global south, our siblings in Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria are constantly under the gun to provide the bread we eat, the so-called freedom we hold so dear? Is that a world you want to live in? No! Do you want to live a life where the profit-hungry ruling class is prepared to wipe out all life on this planet rather than end their infinite wars for oil? No! When it comes down to it, we don't have a choice. We have to fight for a future where all survive. A future where we're not willed by the wealthy or the strong, won by the largest uprising in decades all across occupied Palestine. And protests from here to Colombia caused Israel to lose face in the media and in the U.S. Today, we, the people, stopped the missiles. Tomorrow, we will end the occupation. Palestinians have been fighting for freedom for 73 years and more, and it's time to win the struggle once and for all. You and I, the people gathered here, we are fighting in the heart of the global empire, and it is our responsibility to defeat this empire so that Palestine may be free. What are we going to do? Are we going to rise up? Are we going to rise up? You say it. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Free, free Palestine. 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 This is the power of the people. We're going to march that way. We're going to march towards Exchange Street in front of the Kennedy Plaza. We're going to stage a die-in. When you get there, stop. We'll follow the instructions. Many of you have been to a die-in before, but the world needs to see what the violence that is happening with the U.S. backing looks like. Let's go. Banners to front, wait for the march. Let's go! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! be free!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
Palestine will be free!
Oh, it's another building?
Dying in 261 seconds to commemorate each life lost. If you feel comfortable, you're welcome to lay down in the street to represent some of the bodies that have unfortunately lost their lives in the last year. I invite you to lay down now. If you choose not to, feel free to amplify this. We need to show the world what's going on.
People are dying in, so lying down, representing people who have been killed in Palestine.
We invite you to make this a moment of silence in honor of the life lost.
For some reason, police cars are surrounding the whole die-in.
know anything about that drone? Is it a police drone or is someone filming? You don't know?
I don't know. I doubt it.
The last action they said. Oh, the last action someone was saying that they started using them last summer.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, that's what somebody said at the event that Brian and Richie put on last week. Yeah. He would know for sure.
Thank you, everyone. We will continue here, and we will conclude here. We do have 2 speakers left. Thank you so much for your patience, but more importantly, thank you so much for your support and for being out here today. Thank you. Our first speaker here is David Morales, State Representative from Providence. Hey, come on up, Mr. Morales.
Now, brothers, sisters, and non-binary family, as you have heard here today, what we are seeing happening in Gaza is being fueled by our public tax dollars, and it is genocide, displacement, and above all, it is just an apartheid state. And over the last 2 weeks alone, over 200 Palestinians, including 60+ children, have been murdered. So as a country, as a state, as a city, we cannot continue to enable or contribute to the violent occupation that Israel has on Palestine. Now, despite the ceasefire announced yesterday, we need to be clear that ceasing fire does not end the brutal displacement and occupation happening. Because Palestinians will still be oppressed, while politicians and the mainstream media confidently try to justify this apartheid to us and claim that there are two sides of violence, despite the fact that we literally are watching a $1 billion entity of military going up against civilians with rocks. They even like to go as far as saying that Israel is the victim, and they are the ones that we should be actively supporting as a country. But that's why we're here. That's why we have marched. That's why we have organized. Because we're here to reject these falsehoods. Most importantly, we are demanding that we divest from this violence that we have been supporting endlessly since 1940s. But to do this, it requires our elected officials, our leaders, to support the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, the BDS movement. Because, again, despite what the media tries to tell you, the BDS movement is one that is being led by Palestinians. Yes. It is a systemic effort to finally end. And to do this, it is going to require the boycott and the divestment of institutions that are, again, contributing to Israel, contributing. Some of these folks include Textron, where we just were, the military contractors that fuel this violence and profit off of the backs of innocents. So during this time of crisis, we need our Rhode Island federal delegation to play a role by using their position. This includes Senator Jack Reed. This includes Senator Whitehouse. This includes Representative Cicilline. This includes Representative Langevin. They have the privilege to be in Washington, D.C. They have the privilege to have a seat at the table when it comes to conversations regarding foreign affairs. So we need to demand that they talk with the Biden administration to stop the ongoing $700 million plus arms sales that is going towards Israel and is actively moving as we speak. On a more sustainable front, we also need them to advocate for the removal of the $3 billion plus military aid that we, the taxpayers of the United States, are contributing to each and every single year, despite the fact that we have thousands of people who are homeless across the streets here in the United States, here in Rhode Island. We cannot emphasize it enough. Our leaders have the platform to help ensure that our country is not contributing to the abuse of human rights, and it is their responsibility to use it. Because that's what they campaign on, saying that they're going to listen to the people. And I want to be clear, the people are here and we're making our demands very clear. So all that said, none of what we're demanding is radical. It is the basic principle of human rights, dignity, and the ability for Palestinians to live a decent life with safety. Because for too long, for over 6 decades, Palestinian people have been forced to suffer and experience brutal oppression alongside the support of the United States. So through this level of grassroots organizing, we're going to ensure that from Providence to across the globe, we will fight to ensure that Palestine is finally free through state divestment, through federal divestment. This is a national call to stop the apartheid. And as I close, I want us all to know that you should never allow anyone to tell you that you do not know enough about this issue, because that's how they try to justify the abuse of human rights. We recognize the humanitarian crisis when we see it, and we are demanding that it ends. Thank you.
Another round of applause for that incredible speech. Speaking of politicians, have seen me throughout the day. I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Rasha Abu Salem, child of Palestinian refugees. Grew up in Jersey. My dad was born in 1940 Haifa. My mom's family's from Nazareth. My dad was forced out, his family and my mom's family were forced out at gunpoint out of their homes in 1948. Had to walk to the Lebanese refugee camps. My dad lived in a refugee camp from the ages of 8 to 29 years old. And these aren't the refugee camps that you see today. These are bad now. I would know because I'm an international humanitarian. I've worked in various refugee camps. Back then it was even worse because the world was just starting to figure out how to deal with refugees. Thank you. As I stand here today, I look at this beautiful crowd, and you know what I see? I see people of different backgrounds coming together for truth and justice. And again, as a child of Palestinian refugees, I can't express personally how much that means to me, but I know for my Palestinian brothers and sisters, they express their gratitude for all the voices that are standing up against oppression and occupation. So we thank you. I think we need to address one of the main reasons we're all gathered here today, and that is Senator Reid. Good question. But I'm here, and I will tell you about Senator Reid. Right. When asked about supporting President Biden's $735 million in sales of bombs and military equipment that just took place several days ago, Senator Reid said, and I quote, "Frankly, this is not a mercy resupply. This was something they ordered routinely," and said he supported the sale, and I quote, "because they are designed to make weapons precise. In this conflict, that would seem to be more reasonable."
more reasonable transfer. This is a quote from Senator Reid regarding the sales of Senator Reid, I know you can hear me wherever you are. I would love to hear more about what you mean regarding this statement in its current context. Over 60 Palestinian children are dead. Is that the position you speak about? Over 1,900 Palestinians injured and over 72,000 internally displaced in the past couple of weeks. Is that the position you speak of? Senator Reid, why did you support a resolution of disapproval of arms to the UAE, but support the sales of arms to the apartheid state of Israel? That's a question I'd like answered. They demand to know why their hard-earned money is going to not only support a violent apartheid, but why a public servant is so callously speaking of precision of military weapons as children are being bombed with that said equipment. We demand to know as voters why Senator Reid makes such statements. While we're at it, speaking of politicians, let's make sure to highlight that Senator Reid has profited off of war machinery and the killing of innocent civilians for years. Senator Reid has taken almost $10,000 in campaign contributions from the manufacturer of these bombs, Boeing, and over $200,000 from the defense industry. I don't know about any of you, but, sorry.
There's always a but!
I don't know how such people sleep at night knowing the destruction they're causing. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be able to sleep at night knowing that that's what I'm contributing to.
Yep. Let's fire him.
Yeah. But we can't only speak of Senator Reid now, can we? No. My next message is to President Biden. Whom we as Americans elected with immense faith to lead us out of the darkness over the past several years that we've had to endure. Well, we believed in President Biden and his promises of justice and unity. Yet just several days ago, President Biden showed us that his mercy and justice only apply to certain groups. Hypocrite! What does it say about a politician when he knows children are being slaughtered, but he still provides their oppressor with hundreds of millions of dollars in military equipment? What does it say to those Palestinian families? But more importantly, what does it say to us as his American constituents? What does it say to the voters? We elected you, President Biden, because you told us you would be a different kind of president. But alas, you have only repeated the same sentiment as former presidents, Democratic or Republican. Israel has a right to defend itself. We know. We've heard it for decades. Do Palestinians not deserve the same rights? That's right. As Americans, President Biden, we demand to have answers. Why are our tax dollars used to support what is the world's only remaining apartheid? Why are tax dollars being used to help one of the world's strongest armies callously slaughter innocent civilians who have no way of escaping? As we speak, there are some brave politicians, though, speaking up in an attempt to block this weapons sale, including AOC and Bernie Sanders. I know some of you I want to touch on one quick thing. I know we've all heard of this ceasefire that took place early this morning. I don't know how many of you know that soon after, just a mere hours later, Israel raided Al-Aqsa again after prayer. After Jum'ah prayer, they raided and they attacked with tear gas and sound grenades. I was there in 2014 and I witnessed one of these raids myself. It is brutal and it is cowardly.
That's right.
A ceasefire, what does that mean? We're not dealing with the root cause. What is the root cause? Apartheid, occupation, oppression, land theft. President Biden and Senator Reid, I promise you that we are paying attention. We all know that this time is different. This time, Palestinians' voices are finally being heard around the world. I know you can feel it. Hundreds of thousands of people around the world demand justice and demand an end to Israeli colonialism and apartheid. We are watching what our politicians do. And I can promise you that you will be remembered as being on the wrong side of history if this arms sale goes through. And most importantly, come next election, we will remember whether or not you heard the voices of the people. We will remember if you stood for justice and unity, as you promised. Some politicians may think we're a minority, but they forget that several minorities together make a majority. And the majority demand of Palestinian freedom and an end to Israeli apartheid and occupation. And today, we stand here, brothers and sisters, calling out for an end to oppression, an end to injustice, an end to apartheid. The time has come for our voices to be heard. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. And lastly, folks, we will remember who was on the side of truth and justice and who was on the side of profits. Thank you all.
I want to thank you all for coming out here today, because when politicians do change, Bernie Sanders, for instance, just 4 years ago was on the side of Israel. The fact that he now is against shows the power of the people, because people like Bernie listen. But it's going to take a lot more people power to get the rest of them to listen, and it's going to take a lot more people power than that to change the whole damn system. We need to keep up this fight. So if you want to keep fighting, if you are ready to keep fighting, I encourage you to get involved. Talk to some of the speakers who are here today. Many of us are organizers. My name is Max. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. People here are involved with community organizations, anti-war organizations, religious organizations, all prepared to take a stand for what is just and people's freedom. So come talk to us. If you want to get involved further, if you want to keep up with whatever BDS calls, whatever protest calls, if you have not already done so, check out the Facebook event, click the link, register for emails, like register for the event. You'll get future contacts about this campaign. And let us remember that injustice in Palestine is linked to injustice here. All of the money that is sent to Israel, all of the politicians that approve of the money being sent to Israel, many of them are the same ones that are set to gut the bill that Joe Biden put in front of us weeks ago, that offered some of the most important reforms for working people in the United States that have been announced in decades. Family leave, paid family leave, a minimum wage increase, maternity leave, many other things that working people desperately need. If we have money for war, then we have money for the people. So talk to us, stay connected, get involved, and stay in the streets. Free Palestine! 1 second, everybody. Can I get your attention? We were passing out flyers earlier. Make sure you scan the QR code and sign the action items so we can actually free Palestine, you know? Yeah! Sign the action items, people! Yeah!
Taking a drone photo. Hi, this is Will James for Upriser Eye. This was a rally in support of Palestine. People asking Rhode Island's 4 congressional politicians to divest. Yeah, again, people asking Rhode Island's 4 members of Congress, David Cicilline, James Langevin, Jack Reed, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse to take votes that stop providing foreign aid to Israel, $3.8 billion. I believe Bernie Sanders and ASD are going to be sponsoring a law or bill or resolution to stop that, and people are demanding that Rhode Island politicians do this, vote for it. There's about over 300 people here today in Providence, Rhode Island. People went up to the Textron building. Textron is a company which manufactures weapons or designs software and such that is sold to the Israeli military. I believe it's specifically drones that they're working on in collaboration with an Israeli company. And they're also manufacturing other forms of weapons. Police were there to guard the entrance of the building of Textron. Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. It allows us to pay ourselves sometimes and buy equipment, like the camera stabilizer that I'm holding right now. This is Will James from President. Thank you for tuning in.
Nice to meet you.
Really cute It's a big walkie. Yeah. So I don't know if that's redundant exchanging numbers. Oh, yeah.